If you haven't already, you're definitely going to need your science notebook for this part of the lesson. So if you need to pause the video, go grab it. We're going to add a lot of stuff to it. And I'm also going to give you a lot of upfront information to add in there. I'll give you an example picture of what mine looks like. What I'm going to try and do is make this bigger. I'm not sure if I can while I'm recording. Apparently not. So the first thing you're going to add in there should be on page 11 is where we left off. So add convergent as your definition on page 11. The definition for convergent is anything that's moving towards the same place. It's a type of plate boundary, so where the crust of the earth is moving towards the same place. On page 12, you're going to put the term divergent, which is the motion of moving away from each other. So divergent just refers to the motion, as does convergent, and that's what's happening at a plate boundary. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause this video so that you can set up page 11 and 12 to look like mine, and I'll talk you through this. You can probably do it while I'm talking you through this, but if you need to, you can just pause so that you get caught up on these two pages. So in the upper left-hand corner, you always put the term. So for this one, it's convergent. The definition is moving towards the same place. I drew two arrows moving towards each other. And this is where I'm giving you this information over here because this is going to be a little different than what we've been doing. Instead of examples in the bottom left, I want you to write down the landforms that occur at a convergent boundary. That's going to be really important for you to know. There's two things that can occur there, and they occur simultaneously. That means they occur at the same time. As a convergent boundary happens, a trench occurs. We'll define that on another page. And as those two plates of the earth are moving towards each other, one kind of pushes up and creates a volcano that usually cools and forms eventually a mountain range. I also want you to I drew a little line here to separate that other things that occur here are earthquakes and volcanic activity. That says earthquakes and volcanic activity are common at convergent boundaries. Then what I did is over where usually you just put non-examples on the side, I'm putting both an example and a non-example. One example that you read about was the Mariana Trench. That is the example. A non-example is things like ridges, mid-ocean ridges, and I put the word divergent as the opposite. Convergent and divergent are opposite terms. So again, if you need a pause to catch up, that's fine. And then on page 12, you should have the term divergent, which means moving away from each other. So this says moving apart in different directions. I drew two arrows moving away from each other. And again, just like the last term, we're going to put landforms that are found here. An example of a landform that's found at a plate boundary would be a mid-ocean ridge. We will define that on another page as well. Also, I drew a little line here and know that earthquakes occur here. I drew a line there because earthquakes are not landforms, but they do occur at divergent plate boundaries. So again, divergent means to move away. Under examples over here, I put mid-Atlantic ridge. Under non-examples, I put the word trench and convergent. And again, if you need a pause to catch up those two pages, go ahead and pause the video, and I'm going to move on to the next one. The next two terms, and I'll show you my pages next. One is mid-ocean ridge. We'll put this term on page 13 in your notebook. The definition is an underwater mountain range formed when two plates move apart. You're going to need to do your best to draw this diagram into your science notebook on page 13. And I'll come back to that in just a sec. The next term on page 14, and the last term for today that you need to add in, is trench. A trench is a long, deep indentation in the ocean floor formed when two plates move together. And you're going to have to do your best to try and draw a diagram that represents this so that you know that a trench occurs at a convergent boundary A mid-ocean ridge occurs at a divergent boundary where the plates are moving apart. I'm going to show you my notebook. And again, if you have to pause this video at any time to try and catch up, you have that freedom to do so. On page 13, the term is mid-ocean ridge. The definition is an underwater mountain range formed when two plates move apart. There's Miss Casey's diagram as best as I could draw it. It says mantle, and then this little line here is the Earth's crust. And I made sure to draw arrows that are pointing away from each other. As that happens, magma rises, and it cools when it reaches the Earth's surface, and that's how an underwater mountain range is formed over a very long time. For these two terms, I stuck to the same thing that we've been doing with examples down here and non-examples over here. Under examples, I put Mid-Atlantic Ridge and underwater mountains and the word divergent, because I want you to associate this landform with the term divergent. Under non-examples, I put trench, volcanoes, and the word convergent. On page 14, the term is trench. The definition that I've already read is a long, deep indentation in the ocean floor formed when two plates move towards each other. I did my best to draw the Earth's crust in two sections moving towards each other. One right here is kind of being pushed upwards. That's magma that ends up rising up and cooling and forming usually an either above water, underwater, or above water mountain range. So that's how mountain ranges are formed. And then this is the Earth's crust moving down. Part of it sinks down into the mantle. Right here is where a trench would form. Part of that sinks down into the mantle and is destroyed and turned into more heated molten rock. I put examples down here. One is the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest place in the ocean. You guys read about that. Another is volcanoes occur here. And I put the term convergent because I want you to associate trench with a convergent plate boundary. Non-examples, I put mid-ocean ridge and the term divergent. It's literally the opposite. And then the last thing for this section, I know this is a long video, is this is what your table of contents should look like. If you need any of these images sent to you in a bigger, like on your cell phone to make them bigger, if that helps, just text me and I can shoot you a text message of these pictures because I know it's a little small with this recording. All right. Good luck. Go on to answer your questions based off of your notebook once it's all set up.